Sarah Martinez had dreamed of serving her country since she was 8 years old, watching her father polish his military medals every Sunday morning. Now, at 26, she stood outside the gates of Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California, clutching her transfer papers with sweaty palms. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete, and the sound of helicopters overhead reminded her that she was about to enter a world where few women had ever stepped foot. The guard at the gate looked at her papers twice before waving her through. Sarah could feel his eyes following her as she walked toward the main building, her combat boots clicking against the pavement. She had worked harder than anyone else to get here, graduating top of her class from the Naval Academy, and excelling in every training program the Navy had thrown at her. But she knew that none of that would matter if she couldn't prove herself here. Colonel James Richardson was known throughout the special operations community as a man who did not suffer fools. At 52, he had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, leading some of the most dangerous missions in modern military history. His office walls were covered with commendations, photographs with presidents, and the kind of memorabilia that spoke of a life dedicated entirely to warfare. When Sarah knocked on his door that first morning, she could hear him barking orders into his phone about training schedules and equipment failures. "Come in." His voice boomed from behind the heavy wooden door. Sarah entered and stood at attention, her uniform pressed to perfection, her posture rigid. Colonel Richardson was exactly what she had expected, a mountain of a man with gray hair cut military short and eyes that seemed to look right through people. He was reviewing a stack of files when she entered, and he did not look up immediately. "Lieutenant Martinez, I presume," he said without lifting his gaze from the paperwork. "I've been reading your file. Impressive academic record, solid performance reviews, excellent physical fitness scores." He finally looked up, and Sarah felt the full weight of his scrutiny. "But this isn't the academy, Lieutenant. This is the real world, where theories don't stop bullets and good grades don't complete missions." Sarah remained silent, knowing that speaking out of turn would only confirm whatever doubts he already had about her presence there. The colonel stood up from his desk, revealing his full height of 6 feet 4 inches. He walked around to face her directly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know why you're here, Martinez?" he asked. "To serve with the best, sir. To contribute to special operations missions, and prove that I can handle whatever challenges come my way." Colonel Richardson let out a short laugh that held no humor. "You're here because some politician in Washington thinks we need more diversity in our ranks. You're here because someone up the chain of command decided that having a woman in special operations would look good in the newspapers." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But I'll tell you what you're not here for. You're not here to actually participate in real missions. You're not here to put the lives of my men at risk because you want to prove a point." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. She had expected resistance, but the colonel's open hostility was more intense than she had prepared for. She had spent months training with male soldiers who had initially doubted her abilities, but eventually came to respect her skills. This felt different. This felt personal. "I understand your concerns, sir," Sarah replied carefully. "But I'm here because I've earned my place through performance, not politics. I'm ready to prove that I can contribute meaningfully to this unit." "Prove it." The colonel's eyebrows shot up. "Lieutenant, the men I work with have been through hell and back. They've carried wounded comrades through enemy fire, made split-second decisions that save lives, and endured training that would break most people. You think you can just walk in here and prove you belong?" He moved to a large map of the Middle East that dominated one wall of his office, pointing to various marked locations. "These aren't training exercises, Martinez. These are places where real people died, where my soldiers came back changed forever. This isn't about equal opportunity. This is about life and death." Sarah followed his gaze to the map, recognizing some of the locations from news reports and military briefings. She understood that each mark probably represented a story of courage, loss, and sacrifice that she could only imagine. But she also knew that her desire to serve was just as real as any man's. "Sir, I'm not asking for special treatment," she said. "I'm asking for the chance to prove myself on the same standards as everyone else. If I can't meet those standards, then I don't belong here." But if I can, then my gender shouldn't matter. Colonel Richardson turned back to her with an expression that was hard to read. For a moment, she thought she saw something that might have been respect flickering in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual stern demeanor. The same standards, he repeated. You know what the same standards mean here, Lieutenant? It means that if you fail, people die. It means that if you're not fast enough, strong enough, or smart enough, the mission fails. It means that there's no room for political correctness or social experiments. He walked back to his desk and picked up another file. Your training officer will be Sergeant Major Williams. He's been with Special Operations for 15 years, and he's trained some of the best soldiers in the world. He's also trained some soldiers who didn't make it. He looked at her meaningfully. I've given him explicit instructions about your training regimen. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine but maintained her composure. What kind of instructions, sir? The kind that will determine whether you're here for the right reasons or just to make headlines, the colonel replied. You'll start tomorrow morning at 0500 hours. Physical training, weapons training, tactical exercises. Everything that our SEALs go through, you'll go through. No accommodations, no modifications. He sat back down and opened her file again, clearly signaling that the conversation was over. But Sarah didn't move. Permission to speak freely, sir? Colonel Richardson looked up with obvious irritation. What is it, Martinez? I know you don't think I belong here. I know you think I'm just a political appointment or a publicity stunt. But I've worked my entire adult life to get to this point. I've sacrificed relationships, missed family gatherings, and pushed my body beyond what I thought was possible because I believe in the mission of this unit. I'm not here to prove anything about women in combat. I'm here to serve my country at the highest level possible. The colonel studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether her words were genuine or rehearsed. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was slightly softer than before. We'll see, Lieutenant. We'll see. As Sarah left the colonel's office, she could feel the weight of skeptical stares from other personnel in the building. Word traveled fast in military communities, and everyone seemed to know that the new female officer was being put through her paces. Some looks were curious, others dismissive, and a few seemed almost sympathetic. She found her assigned quarters in a building that housed junior officers. The room was small but functional, with a narrow bed, a desk, and a small closet. As she unpacked her belongings, she thought about the conversation with Colonel Richardson. His hostility had been expected, but his complete dismissal of her capabilities stung more than she had anticipated. That evening, she made her way to the base gym, hoping to familiarize herself with the equipment and maybe work off some of the tension from her first day. The gym was busy with soldiers finishing their daily workouts, and conversations seemed to stop as she entered. She kept her head down and focused on her routine, but she could feel eyes on her throughout her workout. As she was finishing up on the treadmill, a young sergeant approached her. He was tall and lean, with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of military training. You're the new lieutenant, right? He asked. The one who's going to train with the SEALs. Sarah slowed the treadmill to a stop and grabbed her towel. That's right, Sarah Martinez. I'm Sergeant Cooper, he said, extending his hand. I've been here for 3 years. Just wanted to say good luck with Sergeant Major Williams. He's intense. Intense how? Sarah asked, grateful for any information she could get about her new training officer. Sergeant Cooper looked around to make sure they weren't being overheard. Let's just say he has very strong opinions about who belongs in special operations and who doesn't. He's fair, but he doesn't give anyone any breaks. And after what the colonel probably told him, he let the sentence hang in the air. Sarah felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice steady. I'm not looking for breaks. I just want a fair chance to prove myself. That's good to hear, Sergeant Cooper said. Because from what I understand, Sergeant Major Williams is going to put you through everything that our toughest candidates go through. Physical training that would make a marathon look easy, weapons training with live ammunition, tactical scenarios that simulate real combat situations. Most guys wash out within the first 2 weeks. What about the ones who don't wash out? Sergeant Cooper smiled for the first time. The ones who don't wash out become some of the most capable soldiers in the world. They learn to think under pressure, move with precision, and make decisions that can mean the difference between mission success and mission failure. He paused. They also learned to trust their teammates completely, because in the field, you're only as strong as your weakest link. As Sarah walked back to her quarters that night, she thought about what Sergeant Cooper had said. She understood that earning the trust and respect of these soldiers would be just as important as passing any physical or technical test. They needed to know that she wouldn't be a liability in dangerous situations, that she could perform under pressure, and that she would have their backs when things went wrong. She spent the rest of the evening reviewing tactical manuals and studying the layouts of various weapons systems. She had always been a thorough preparer, and she knew that knowledge would be just as important as physical ability in the challenges ahead. As she finally turned off her reading light and tried to sleep, she could hear the sounds of helicopters and training exercises in the distance, reminding her that she was now part of a world where the stakes were higher than anything she had ever experienced. The next morning came early, with her alarm buzzing at 4:30 a.m. Sarah had barely slept, her mind racing with anticipation and anxiety about what the day would bring. She dressed quickly in her physical training uniform and made her way to the designated meeting point, a large field behind the main training building. Sergeant Major Williams was already there when she arrived, even though she was 10 minutes early. He was a compact man with muscles that looked carved from stone and eyes that missed nothing. He was setting up various pieces of equipment around the field: ropes, weights, obstacle course elements, and what looked like enough gear for an entire platoon. "Lieutenant Martinez," he said without looking up from his preparations. "Right on time. I hope you ate a good breakfast, because you're going to need all the energy you can get." Sarah had actually been too nervous to eat much, but she didn't mention that. "I'm ready, Sergeant Major." He finally looked at her directly, and she felt the same kind of intense scrutiny she had experienced with Colonel Richardson. But where the colonel's gaze had been dismissive, Sergeant Major Williams seemed to be assessing her like a piece of equipment that might or might not be suitable for a particular job. "We'll see about that," he said. "The colonel has given me specific instructions about your training. You're to receive no special consideration because of your gender, no modifications to accommodate physical differences, and no sympathy if you can't keep up." He gestured toward the equipment he had set up. "Today we're going to establish your baseline capabilities. I need to know exactly what you can and can't do before we move on to the advanced training." What followed was 3 hours of the most intense physical testing Sarah had ever experienced. Sergeant Major Williams put her through every conceivable exercise: running with full packs, climbing ropes, carrying heavy weights across obstacles, crawling through mud under barbed wire, and performing precision movements while exhausted. He took notes on everything, timing her performance and comparing it to standards that she couldn't see. Other soldiers had gathered to watch parts of the testing, and Sarah could feel their skeptical attention. Some seemed to be waiting for her to fail, while others appeared genuinely curious about how she would perform. She pushed herself harder than she ever had before, determined not to give anyone ammunition to use against her. By the end of the morning, Sarah was covered in mud and sweat, her uniform torn in several places from the obstacle courses. Her muscles ached in ways she hadn't felt since her first weeks of basic training, and she could taste blood from where she had bitten her tongue during a particularly challenging rope climb. Sergeant Major Williams reviewed his notes while Sarah tried to catch her breath. His expression gave away nothing about how she had performed, and the silence stretched uncomfortably long. "Not bad," he finally said. "Your endurance is good, your form needs work, and your upper body strength is adequate, but not exceptional." He looked up from his notes. "But you didn't quit, and you didn't ask for any breaks. That counts for something." Sarah felt a small surge of relief, but she could tell that this was just the beginning. "Tomorrow we start weapons training," Sergeant Major Williams continued. "We'll be working with everything from handguns to sniper rifles to heavy weapons systems. The colonel wants to see if you can shoot as well as you can run." He gave her a look that was almost challenging. "I hope you're a quick learner, Lieutenant, because in a few weeks, you're going to be tested against some of the best marksmen in the military." As Sarah walked back to her quarters to clean up and prepare for the afternoon's classroom sessions, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The physical challenges had been brutal, but she had survived them. The weapons training would be different. It would require not just physical ability, but precision, concentration, and the kind of mental toughness that came from knowing that accuracy could mean the difference between life and death. She spent her lunch breaks studying weapons manuals and reviewing shooting techniques. She had always been a decent marksman, but she knew that decent wouldn't be enough in this environment. She would need to be exceptional, and she would need to prove it in front of people who were already convinced she would fail. The shooting range at Naval Special Warfare Command was unlike anything Sarah had experienced before. While most military ranges were simple affairs with basic targets and standard distances, this facility was designed to simulate real combat conditions. The targets could move, pop up unexpectedly, and even shoot back with training ammunition. Multiple ranges allowed for simultaneous training with different weapons systems, and the sound of gunfire was almost constant during training hours. Sergeant Major Williams led Sarah to Range 7, which was reserved for advanced marksmanship training. Several other soldiers were already there, cleaning weapons and setting up equipment. Sarah recognized a few faces from around the base, but she had not been formally introduced to any of them. "Gentlemen," Sergeant Major Williams announced, "this is Lieutenant Martinez. She'll be training with us for the next several weeks." The response was a collection of polite nods and curious stares. "Martinez, meet your training partners. These are some of our finest marksmen, and they'll be helping to evaluate your progress." The first man to step forward was tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of steady demeanor that suggested years of combat experience. "I'm Chief Petty Officer Johnson," he said, extending his hand. 15 years with the SEALs, specializing in long-range precision shooting. His handshake was firm but not overly aggressive, and his tone was professional rather than hostile. Next was a younger man with sharp features and intense eyes. "Petty Officer First Class Rodriguez," he said, "weapons specialist and demolitions expert. I've been working with advanced shooting systems for about 8 years." He studied Sarah with obvious curiosity, as if trying to figure out what she was capable of. The third man was compact and wiry, with prematurely gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of extensive field experience. "Senior Chief Peterson," he said simply. "I train new shooters and evaluate their readiness for operational deployment." His introduction was matter-of-fact, but Sarah could sense that his evaluation would carry significant weight with the command structure. Sergeant Major Williams gestured toward a table covered with various weapons systems. "We'll start with basic handgun proficiency and work our way up to more complex systems. Each weapon has different characteristics, different applications, and different requirements for mastery." He picked up a standard-issue pistol. "This is your foundation. If you can't master this, nothing else matters." For the next 2 hours, Sarah worked through basic shooting drills with the pistol. The training was more intensive than anything she had done before, focusing not just on accuracy but on speed, consistency, and performance under stress. Sergeant Major Williams would suddenly shout commands, set time limits, or create distractions to test her concentration. Shooting in a controlled environment is one thing, he explained as Sarah reloaded for another drill. Shooting when someone is shooting back at you is completely different. We need to know that you can maintain accuracy when your heart rate is elevated, when you're tired, and when you're scared. Chief Petty Officer Johnson worked with her on stance and breathing techniques, while Petty Officer Rodriguez focused on weapon maintenance and technical knowledge. Senior Chief Peterson mainly observed, taking notes, and occasionally offering brief corrections to her form. By the end of the morning session, Sarah's performance had been solid but not spectacular. Her accuracy was good, her speed was adequate, and her weapon handling was safe and competent. But she could tell from the expressions of her instructors that they were looking for something more. "Tomorrow we move to rifles," Sergeant Major Williams announced as they cleaned up the range. "Longer distances, more complex calculations, higher stakes. I hope you've been studying ballistics, Lieutenant, because you're going to need every bit of knowledge you can get." That afternoon, Sarah spent hours in the base library, reading everything she could find about advanced marksmanship techniques. She studied wind calculations, bullet trajectory charts, and the technical specifications of various rifle systems. She also read after-action reports from recent missions, trying to understand how marksmanship skills translated into real-world combat effectiveness. As she was leaving the library, she encountered Colonel Richardson in the hallway. He was walking with several other senior officers, engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion about operational planning. When he saw Sarah, he stopped the conversation and approached her. "How was your first day on the range, Lieutenant?" he asked. His tone was neutral, but Sarah could sense the underlying skepticism. "Challenging but educational, sir," she replied. "I'm learning a lot from Sergeant Major Williams and the other instructors." "I'm sure you are," the colonel said. "I've been getting reports on your progress. Your physical training scores are adequate, and your weapons handling appears to be competent." He paused, and Sarah sensed that a significant but was coming. "However, competent isn't good enough for special operations. We need exceptional. We need soldiers who can perform beyond normal human capabilities when the situation demands it." One of the other officers, a Navy commander whom Sarah didn't recognize, leaned into the conversation. "Colonel, perhaps we're setting unrealistic expectations. Not every soldier needs to be a superhuman performer. Sometimes adequate skills combined with good judgment and reliability are more valuable than exceptional ability without maturity." Colonel Richardson's expression darkened slightly. "Commander, with respect, adequate skills get people killed in our line of work. When my teams deploy, they're facing enemies who are highly trained, well-equipped, and completely committed to their mission. Our soldiers need to be better than adequate. They need to be superior in every measurable way." Sarah listened to this exchange with growing understanding of the pressure she was under. This wasn't just about her personal ambitions or even about women in combat roles. This was about the colonel's perception that any weakness in his unit could result in mission failure and lost lives. His hostility toward her wasn't necessarily personal. It was professional concern taken to an extreme level. "Sir," Sarah interjected carefully, "I understand your concerns about maintaining unit effectiveness. I'm committed to meeting whatever standards you set, regardless of how challenging they might be." The colonel looked at her for a long moment before responding. "We'll see, Lieutenant. Talk is easy. Performance under pressure is what matters." He turned back to the commander. "Which is why Lieutenant Martinez will be participating in our advanced training exercises next week. Full tactical scenarios, live ammunition, real-world conditions. If she can perform at the level we require under those circumstances, then perhaps we can have a different conversation about her future with this unit." As the group of officers continued down the hallway, Sarah felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. She understood that she was being set up for a test that would determine not just her immediate future, but possibly her entire military career. The advanced training exercises were legendary within the special operations community, intensive simulations that pushed soldiers to their absolute limits and beyond. The next morning's rifle training began before dawn. Sarah arrived at the range to find that the setup was completely different from the previous day. Instead of stationary targets at fixed distances, the range now featured moving targets, concealed positions, and environmental obstacles that would require her to adapt her shooting techniques constantly. Long-range precision shooting is as much about patience and observation as it is about marksmanship, Chief Petty Officer Johnson explained as he helped Sarah adjust the scope on her assigned rifle. "You need to read wind conditions, calculate distance, account for environmental factors, and time your shots perfectly. Miss any one of those elements, and you miss your target." The morning session was humbling. Sarah's first several shots missed their targets entirely, despite careful preparation and what she thought were accurate calculations. The rifle was more sensitive than anything she had worked with before, and small errors in technique or judgment resulted in significant misses at longer ranges. Petty Officer Rodriguez worked with her on breathing techniques and trigger control, while Senior Chief Peterson focused on environmental awareness and tactical positioning. Both men were patient but demanding, correcting errors immediately and pushing her to perform better on each subsequent attempt. "Your problem isn't your shooting ability," Senior Chief Peterson observed after watching her miss another target. "Your problem is that you're thinking too much. You're trying to calculate everything perfectly instead of developing the instinctive feel that comes with experience." He gestured toward the distant target. "A real sniper doesn't have time to work through mathematical equations in the field. They develop an intuitive sense for how their weapon behaves under different conditions. This insight proved to be crucial. When Sarah stopped trying to overanalyze every shot and began trusting her training and instincts, her accuracy improved dramatically. By the end of the morning, she was consistently hitting targets at distances that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. Sergeant Major Williams had been watching from a distance, and he approached as Sarah was cleaning her rifle after the session. "Better," he said simply. "Much better. You're starting to understand that marksmanship is about more than just technical knowledge." "Thank you, Sergeant Major," Sarah replied. "I feel like I'm beginning to understand the difference between shooting and real marksmanship." "That's good," he said, "because tomorrow we're going to test that understanding under stress. We're moving to dynamic shooting scenarios, targets that shoot back, time pressure, physical exhaustion, and decision-making under fire. This is where we separate the marksman from the true special operations shooters." The dynamic shooting scenarios proved to be unlike anything Sarah had experienced. Instead of carefully aimed shots from stable positions, she found herself moving constantly, engaging multiple targets while under simulated enemy fire. The training ammunition used in the exercise created realistic sound and visual effects, making the scenarios feel genuinely dangerous even though no one was actually at risk. Chief Petty Officer Johnson served as her partner for many of these exercises, providing cover fire while she moved to new positions and offering tactical guidance through radio communications. "In the field, you're never shooting alone," he explained during a brief break between scenarios. "You're part of a team, and your shooting ability has to complement the abilities of your teammates. Sometimes that means taking difficult shots to protect others. Sometimes it means passing up good shots to maintain tactical advantage." Sarah found herself adapting to this team-based approach more easily than she had expected. Her instinct to work collaboratively, which had sometimes been seen as weakness in more competitive environments, proved to be valuable in these tactical scenarios. She learned to communicate clearly and quickly with her teammates, share information about target locations and movements, and coordinate her actions with others to achieve mission objectives. By the end of the week, Sarah's performance had improved dramatically. Her accuracy scores were consistently high, her speed had increased significantly, and her ability to perform under stress had impressed even the skeptical Senior Chief Peterson. "You've made remarkable progress," he told her as they reviewed her scores from the day's exercises. "When you started, your technical skills were adequate, but your tactical understanding was limited. Now you're beginning to think like a special operations marksman rather than just a soldier who can shoot." Sergeant Major Williams gathered the entire training group for a final evaluation session. "Lieutenant Martinez has completed the basic marksmanship phase of her training," he announced. "Her scores place her in the top 20% of all candidates we've trained this year. She'll be working alongside experienced SEAL teams in scenarios that simulate real combat conditions. Her performance in those exercises will determine whether she's ready for operational deployment." As the group dispersed, Chief Petty Officer Johnson approached Sarah privately. "You've done well this week," he said. "Better than most people expected, including some of the instructors." He lowered his voice slightly. "But I want you to understand what you're facing next week. The advanced exercises aren't just about individual performance. They're about team integration. The guys you'll be working with have been operating together for years. They trust each other completely, and they're going to need to trust you the same way." Sarah nodded, understanding the significance of what he was saying. "How do I earn that trust?" "By proving that you can perform when it matters most," Johnson replied. "By showing that you'll have their backs when things go wrong. And by demonstrating that your presence makes the team stronger, not weaker." He paused. "The colonel is going to be watching those exercises personally. This is your chance to change his mind about your capabilities." That evening, Sarah spent hours preparing for the advanced exercises. She reviewed tactical manuals, studied team communication protocols, and practiced equipment drills until she could perform them automatically. She understood that the next week would determine not just her future with this unit, but possibly her entire military career. As she finally prepared for bed, she reflected on how much had changed since her first day on the base. The physical challenges had been difficult, but the psychological pressure had been even more intense. She had proven that she could meet the technical standards required for special operations, but she knew that the real test was still ahead. The advanced exercises would require her to integrate all of her skills, physical conditioning, marksmanship, tactical knowledge, and teamwork under the most stressful conditions possible. She would be working with soldiers who had years of experience and who would be evaluating her readiness to join their ranks. More importantly, she would be performing in front of Colonel Richardson, who had made it clear that he considered her presence a liability to his unit. This would be her opportunity to prove that his initial assessment had been wrong, that she could contribute meaningfully to special operations missions, and that her gender was irrelevant to her ability to serve effectively. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, she could hear the sounds of night training exercises in the distance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt more confident than she had since arriving at the base. She had proven to herself and to her instructors that she could meet their standards. Now she needed to prove that she could exceed them. The morning of the advanced tactical exercises dawned gray and overcast, with a cold wind blowing in from the ocean. Sarah arrived at the briefing room at 0500 hours to find it already filled with some of the most experienced special operations personnel on the base. These were men who had completed multiple deployments, led dangerous missions, and earned reputations as some of the most capable soldiers in the military. Colonel Richardson stood at the front of the room, his expression as stern as ever. Behind him was a large tactical display showing a detailed map of the training area, complete with enemy positions, objectives, and potential complications. The scenario looked more complex than anything Sarah had encountered during her previous training. "Gentlemen," the colonel began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Today's exercise will simulate a high-priority rescue mission in hostile territory. You will be working in four-man teams to extract a valuable asset while dealing with sophisticated enemy resistance. The scenario includes time pressure, limited ammunition, and multiple potential complications." He gestured toward the tactical display. "Your target is located in a fortified compound approximately 2 miles from your insertion point. Intelligence suggests heavy resistance, including trained snipers, automatic weapons, and possible improvised explosive devices. Your mission is to reach the target, secure the asset, and extract to the designated pickup zone within a 4-hour window." Sarah listened intently as the colonel outlined the specific challenges they would face. The exercise area covered several square miles of rough terrain, including urban environments, open fields, and heavily wooded sections. The opposing force would be made up of experienced military personnel, using advanced tactics and equipment to simulate a realistic enemy threat. Teams will be evaluated on mission completion, tactical effectiveness, and individual performance under stress, Colonel Richardson continued. "This exercise is designed to push you beyond your normal capabilities and test your readiness for actual combat deployment." His eyes found Sarah in the crowd. "All participants will be held to the same standards, regardless of rank, experience, or any other factors." The room was divided into teams, and Sarah found herself assigned to Team Charlie alongside 3 experienced SEALs. The team leader was Master Chief Petty Officer Davis, a 20-year veteran with extensive combat experience. The other 2 members were Petty Officer Thompson, a communications specialist, and Petty Officer Martinez, no relation, a demolitions expert. Master Chief Davis gathered his team for a private briefing session. "I've been told that this is Lieutenant Martinez's final evaluation," he said, looking directly at Sarah. "That means the success or failure of our mission will have a significant impact on her future with this unit." He paused to let that sink in. "I want to be clear about something. During this exercise, you're not a trainee or an observer. You're a full member of this team, and we're counting on you to perform at the same level as everyone else." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Understood, Master Chief. What do you need me to do?" "Based on your training scores, you'll be our designated marksman," Davis replied. "Your job is to provide precision fire support during the assault phase and cover our extraction route during the withdrawal. Thompson will handle communications and navigation. Martinez will deal with any explosive obstacles, and I'll coordinate our overall tactics." They spent the next hour reviewing the mission plan in detail. Sarah studied the terrain maps, identified potential shooting positions, and calculated ranges to key target areas. The other team members shared their expertise freely, offering insights about tactics, equipment, and the likely behavior of the opposing force. The guys playing the enemy force are some of our best instructors, Petty Officer Thompson explained. They know all the same tactics we do, and they're going to use every advantage they can get. Expect them to be in positions we don't anticipate, using techniques that will surprise us. As the teams prepared to deploy to the exercise area, Sarah noticed Colonel Richardson speaking with several observers who would be monitoring the exercise. She couldn't hear what they were discussing, but she caught the colonel glancing in her direction several times. The pressure of being watched and evaluated was intense, but she tried to focus on the mission rather than on the potential consequences of failure. The insertion phase began with a simulated helicopter drop at the edge of the training area. Teams had to move quickly from the landing zone to avoid detection by enemy patrols, while navigating through challenging terrain in the pre-dawn darkness. Sarah found herself moving through dense woods with her teammates, using night vision equipment and hand signals to maintain stealth. Master Chief Davis proved to be an exceptional team leader, making quick decisions and adapting to changing conditions as they encountered unexpected obstacles. When they discovered that their planned route was blocked by an enemy checkpoint, he immediately developed an alternative approach that took advantage of Sarah's marksmanship skills. "Martinez, I need you to provide overwatch from that ridge while we move around the checkpoint," he whispered through their radio communications. "If any enemy personnel spot us during the movement, you'll need to neutralize them quickly and quietly." Sarah positioned herself on the designated ridge with a clear view of the checkpoint and the route her teammates would take. Through her scope, she could see two enemy soldiers patrolling the area, both carrying weapons and maintaining professional alertness. The scenario required her to make split-second decisions about when and whether to engage targets, balancing the need for stealth against the imperative to protect her teammates. When one of the enemy soldiers moved into a position where he might spot her advancing teammates, Sarah made the decision to engage. Her shot was precise and quiet, using subsonic ammunition that minimized sound signature. The target was neutralized without alerting other enemy personnel in the area, allowing her team to continue their advance undetected. "Good shot," Master Chief Davis's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Clean and professional. Stay in position and keep watch while we continue the approach." The assault phase of the mission proved to be the most challenging part of the exercise. The target compound was heavily defended, with multiple enemy positions providing overlapping fields of fire. Sarah's role was to provide precision shots that would suppress specific threats while her teammates maneuvered to reach the building where the asset was being held. From her overwatch position, Sarah could see the entire compound layout and the disposition of enemy forces. She identified priority targets, enemy snipers, heavy weapons positions, and command personnel, and engaged them in a carefully planned sequence that supported her team's tactical movement. The enemy force proved to be every bit as capable as Petty Officer Thompson had warned. They used sophisticated camouflage, moved unpredictably, and employed tactics that challenged Sarah's ability to track and engage them. Several times, she found herself having to make rapid adjustments as enemy personnel appeared in unexpected locations or used terrain features to mask their movements. "Contact left." Master Chief Davis's urgent voice came through the radio. "Sniper in the tower, approximately 200 meters from your position. Can you engage?" Sarah quickly located the target through her scope. The enemy sniper was partially concealed behind concrete barriers, with only a small portion of his position visible. The shot would require extreme precision, as any miss might result in return fire that could compromise the entire mission. She took a deep breath, calculated wind and distance factors, and squeezed the trigger smoothly. The shot struck exactly where intended, neutralizing the threat and allowing her teammates to continue their advance toward the target building. "Target down," she reported. Continuing overwatch. The extraction phase required Sarah to reposition quickly and provide covering fire as her team withdrew from the compound with the rescued asset. This was the most dangerous part of the mission, as enemy forces would be converging on their location and attempting to prevent their escape. Moving through the compound under fire while maintaining effective shooting was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in training. She had to process multiple threats simultaneously, make rapid decisions about target priority, and maintain accuracy while under extreme stress. Her teammates were counting on her to keep enemy forces suppressed while they moved to the extraction point. Martinez, we've got multiple hostiles moving to cut off our extraction route, Master Chief Davis radioed. I need you to slow them down while we get to the pickup zone. Sarah engaged a series of targets in rapid succession, using her rifle to maximum effectiveness while moving between cover positions. Her shooting was fast and accurate, forcing enemy personnel to take cover rather than pursuing her teammates. The coordination between her fire support and her team's movement was seamless, demonstrating the kind of tactical integration that was essential for special operations missions. The final phase of the exercise required all team members to reach the extraction point within the specified time limit while dealing with a last-minute complication. Enemy forces had positioned themselves to ambush teams approaching the pickup zone, creating a situation that required creative tactics and exceptional marksmanship to resolve. Sarah found herself in a position where she could see enemy personnel that her teammates could not detect from their position. She had to communicate target locations clearly while engaging multiple threats in a compressed time frame. Her ability to multitask under pressure, shooting, communicating, and moving simultaneously, proved to be crucial for mission success. 3 targets, bearing 090 from your position, approximately 50 meters, she radioed to her teammates while engaging a separate group of enemy personnel. They're positioned behind the concrete barriers near the helicopter landing area. Master Chief Davis acknowledged her report and adjusted his team's approach accordingly. The coordination between Sarah's intelligence gathering and her teammates' tactical movement demonstrated the kind of seamless teamwork that distinguished special operations units from conventional military forces. When the exercise concluded, Sarah's team had successfully completed their mission within the time limit and with minimal casualties. More importantly, they had functioned as an integrated unit, with each member contributing specialized skills toward the overall objective. Colonel Richardson gathered all participants for an immediate after-action review. His expression was unreadable as he reviewed the performance data from each team. Sarah noticed that he spent considerable time reviewing her specific scores and the reports from her teammates. Today's exercise demonstrated the difference between individual competence and team effectiveness, the colonel began. Several participants showed excellent individual skills, but failed to integrate effectively with their teammates. Others showed good teamwork, but lacked the individual capabilities necessary for mission success. He paused and looked directly at Sarah. A few participants demonstrated both individual excellence and outstanding team integration. Master Chief Davis was called upon to provide a detailed assessment of his team's performance. Sir, every member of Team Charlie performed at the highest level throughout the exercise, he reported. Lieutenant Martinez's marksmanship was exceptional, but, more importantly, her tactical awareness and communication skills made our entire team more effective. She identified threats that we couldn't see, provided accurate intelligence, and delivered precision fire support exactly when and where it was needed. Petty Officer Thompson added his own assessment. Lieutenant Martinez adapted quickly to our team dynamics and communication protocols. She didn't require special accommodation or additional guidance. She functioned like an experienced team member from the beginning of the exercise. Colonel Richardson listened to these reports with obvious interest. When the formal debriefing was complete, he asked Sarah to remain behind for a private conversation. Lieutenant, I owe you an apology, he said once they were alone. When you arrived at this command, I made assumptions about your capabilities based on factors that had nothing to do with your actual performance. Today's exercise demonstrated that those assumptions were incorrect. Sarah remained at attention, unsure how to respond to this unexpected change in the colonel's attitude. Your marksmanship scores from today's exercise are among the highest we've recorded in recent years, he continued. More importantly, your teammates have provided unanimous positive feedback about your performance as a team member. They've recommended you for immediate inclusion in operational deployment rotations. He walked to his desk and picked up a file that Sarah recognized as her personnel record. I'm recommending you for advanced special operations training and eventual assignment to one of our operational teams. Your performance has proven that you belong here, and I was wrong to suggest otherwise. Sarah felt a mixture of relief, vindication, and professional satisfaction. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to prove myself. You didn't just prove yourself, Lieutenant, Colonel Richardson replied. You proved that excellence has nothing to do with gender, background, or political considerations. You proved that the only thing that matters in special operations is the ability to perform when performance matters most. He extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Martinez. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish on your first operational deployment. As Sarah left the colonel's office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The skepticism, the challenging training, and the intense pressure had all been necessary parts of proving that she belonged in this elite community. She had not asked for special treatment or accommodations. She had simply demanded the opportunity to meet the same standards as everyone else. Walking across the base that evening, Sarah encountered Sergeant Major Williams, who had been observing her progress from the beginning. Congratulations, Lieutenant, he said with what might have been a slight smile. You've earned your place here through performance, not politics. That's exactly how it should be. Thank you, Sergeant Major, Sarah replied. I couldn't have done it without the excellent training and honest feedback from instructors like you. That's what we're here for, he said. To identify soldiers who can meet our standards and help them reach their full potential. Gender, race, background, none of that matters if you can perform when it counts. As Sarah prepared for her new role within the Special Operations community, she understood that her success represented more than just personal achievement. She had demonstrated that women could meet the demanding standards of elite military units without requiring modifications or special considerations. Her performance had been evaluated on exactly the same criteria as her male counterparts, and she had exceeded those standards through dedication, skill, and determination. The colonel who had initially dismissed her capabilities had become one of her strongest advocates. The teammates who had been skeptical of her abilities now trusted her completely. Most importantly, she had proven to herself that she belonged in this challenging and rewarding environment. Her journey from dismissed outsider to respected team member had been difficult, but it had also been fair. She had been given the opportunity to prove herself on equal terms, and she had succeeded through merit rather than accommodation. As she looked forward to her first operational deployment, Sarah knew that she was ready to serve alongside the best soldiers in the world, contributing her skills to missions that would test every aspect of her training and character. The woman who had walked through the gates of Naval Special Warfare Command just weeks earlier had been determined but uncertain. The soldier who now prepared for operational deployment was confident, capable, and fully integrated into one of the most elite military communities in the world. She had not changed the standards. She had risen to meet them, proving that excellence knows no boundaries when opportunity meets preparation and determination.